everyone, and welcome to Holt's latest episode of Expert Talk, the podcast where we take a deep dive into the ideas, people, and innovation shaping future of business. I'm your host, Daniella Ubiera, a current Holt student, and today's episode is titled Global Messaging: Clarity in a Distracted World. I'm joined here today by Professor Patrick Lynch, Holt Professor and AI Faculty Lead. Professor Patrick, I'm thrilled to have you join us here today. Thank you for joining me. And why don't you give our audience a quick introduction to yourself and your experience in the field?
Hey, it's great to be with you all. Thank you so much for having me. Right. Well, I'm a professor here at Holt. I'm AI faculty lead. I like to think that I help people tame AI instead of getting tackled by it. I've had a great experience with Accenture before I had joined Holt, and I also ran big data analytics at a healthcare analytic company. And I'm about to have my first book published as a solo author, just coming up. So I'm really proud of this, called How to Outsmart AI and Thrive. I think we're going to touch on some of the ideas from that book today. I'm also a recovering retail employee, so I know marketing very well from that perspective, and I think we're going to touch on some of that as well.
Great. Thank you very much for sharing, and congrats on the book. I'm so excited for it to come out, to be able to read it. This topic is very exciting for me, and I'm a marketing major, so what a best way to just share a little bit of these ideas. So before we jump in, I just want to tell our watchers and viewers that this session is being recorded. So if you need to leave at any point, you'll be able to access the full conversation afterwards. So great. To kick things off now, I think it would be great to open our conversation with you, Professor, by looking at the challenge marketers and business leaders are really facing today. We have more tools, more channels, and more data than ever before. But it often feels kind of harder, not easier, to connect with your audience. So Professor Patrick, in a world where everyone is competing for attention because we are really overwhelmed by how much we have around us, what does clarity and global messaging really mean today?
Yeah, it's a great place to start. I think clarity used to mean that we wanted the message to be simple, but today clarity means we have to have the message be relevant. And that's even harder than ever because of all of those things that you're noticing. There's greater channels, there's greater data. And really, we're talking about AI affecting this. It's accelerating the growth, but also the challenges at the same time. It's easier than ever before to spin up more and more of these messages, but to get relevance across cultures, across campaigns, across those channels, I think the volume and the clarity are almost at odds with each other, because how do you be relevant across all of those things? So I talk about this a lot with executives that I'm consulting to, or with classes, is that I think that clarity is now a skill, a judgment skill that you need to tap into. If you're a professional, if you're a student, if you're thinking about the audience that you have to reach, how am I going to be relevant so that the message lands not just in Sao Paulo, but also in Stockholm? If you're talking about a global audience. So This is really something that we look at all the time, of how are we going to be using the tools appropriately to get that relevance in our message.
Yeah, and I love that you say that, because especially as someone who's just entering into the professional world, it's very overwhelming, the amount of just every single information that we get, especially from brands. We get ads everywhere in every single media platform that we're at. It doesn't matter if it's written platform or if it's a digital platform or in social media. We get totally overwhelmed by it. So I think it's pretty great to not just share in the business side of things, but also how consumers can just get more clarity on this side. So thank you for sharing your ideas, and thank you for setting up the context for us and setting the scene. So now I know you contributed to the original attention economy research back in 2001, a few years ago, huh? When you were in Accenture. So looking back at that time, why is the idea of attention economy specifically even more relevant now, especially as artificial intelligence tools just make it easy to generate content at a speed and scale?
Yeah, I know. I don't look the same as I did in 2001. Believe me. But I was at Accenture at the time with great colleagues, Tom Davenport and John Beck. And what we were looking at in the attention economy at the time was just how overwhelmed we were by information. I don't think that that's any less true today. At the time, though, we were looking at emails or all the different kinds of databases that for the first time people were having access to. Then when you're shifting now to the world of marketing, you can see that as so true. In just the moment that I had to say that sentence, how many DMs have you missed? How many posts on social media are hitting your feed? It's really overwhelming. We see it's easier and easier now than ever before that these tools are tapping in to these kind of users to shop. And it's also changing the way that they're shopping. This is why the relevance message, that clarity that we already spoke about, is just so important. I think that marketers can fall into these kinds of traps. And so when I was thinking about all of the things that went into this, it's that when we have so much volume and so much access, the reason why attention matters is that really what's on trial is trust, is that if we can't reach with an appropriate message that's relevant to the audience, we're really jeopardizing having trust in our brand, in our products, and our services, maybe even our people. And we're going to, I think, talk about some of this today. And we know when it's just not right. And it's right at the tip of our fingers that it looks really spectacular, but somehow fake. And we got to tap into understanding this a little bit more. So my work on the original attention economy was, how you cut through that noise. I think that it's still relevant today. It's really a book that has stood the test of time. There are different types of attention that we could talk about. But again, it's still going to help us get back to a relevant message. And it's really worth a second look nowadays where we're just deluged with more and more information and more stuff that kind of looks fake, but seems real. I think that's what's so important, that it has to be reminded. We have to be reminded about how much really trust is at risk if we don't get this right.
Yeah. Thank you very much for sharing that. I think it's a great way of explaining that more content does not automatically means more attention. And I think that's something that sadly it's been communicated in one way or the other that it does, but clearly it doesn't. Especially when you see, as you just said, it feels forced, it feels fake when a brand is trying to like form trust or loyalty just by hopping into trends and posting a million posts on Instagram or TikTok to kind of get attention, when it doesn't really feel like it's connected to their brand, and it totally feels forced or untrustworthy.
I want to build on this just a moment, because I think the other thing that's going on here is that we've had about 20 years now where we've been optimizing for SEO, for search engine optimization.
Yes.
That meant by very nature that there's a human, that'd be you, doing the search. But nowadays, a lot of times why we're seeing some of that is we're seeing now that we're going to have to optimize for bots. There's a lot of ads, and there's really a whole new wave of science around how do we get the bots to pay attention. So we're now optimizing much more for generative AI. We're talking about GEO instead of SEO. How are we going to attract the bots to pay attention? And so, in many ways, as a human, you're looking at this and you're thinking it feels fake. We should definitely talk about that because it is about the trust. Maybe a bot trusts it. And this is the double-edged sword. Because many of us are going to be working for these companies that are leaning into this. We're going to be having new kinds of marketing messages and ads. And now we might be optimizing for a different kind of attention, a bot's attention. And it's a very different, style of what's coming than what has come before it.
Yeah, you're totally right. And that comes back to the beginning of the episode where we were chatting about how more challenging it gets. We have more tools, we have more space, we have easier ways of getting to people in one way, but it's also so fast that it's kind of overwhelming, and it's moving so fast. It's like evolution with how we use technology inside of marketing and just like the whole world of business. It's just so rapid that it's hard to just keep track and knowing what's the right way to go. So I'm glad we're doing this so we can have more clarity on that at the end of the episode. So now, I want to jump back to when we were preparing for today's episode and talking about it, and you referred to the phrase "wonder has a half-life." What do you mean by that? And why should marketers pay close attention to this specific phrase?
Yeah. Wonder has a half-life. Novelty decays. That's it. I'll tell you a time in my life that I saw this very young. I had never been to Disneyland before, had always wanted to go. And finally, I was in fifth grade. My parents say that we're going to go to Disneyland. I was over the moon. I remember anticipating about the trip. We packed up the car. We drove overnight, arrive in the morning at Disneyland, and it's absolutely magical. Then, just a few months later, my Little League team also had a trip to Disneyland. So now I had never been, and now I went twice. And sure enough, in the fall, my school had a trip to Disneyland. Had never been, and then in the same calendar year, I had been there 3 times. And by the third time, I was Mickey'd out. I didn't want any more pixie dust. I was, I had castle fatigue at that point, even though those were the same things that I just was so excited about. And I bet you can tap into an experience that's like that. If you think about something that you've never had, you've anticipated it and you've had it, but then it starts to fade. And the thing is, this is going on right now. These same kinds of things are going on with AI. I don't know, Danielle, if you'll tell me the truth. Have you made yourself into an action figure using the AI or maybe some kind of character?
Yeah, not yet. Not
Well,
yet. But I
I'll
do
tell you.
have a digital twin on an AI platform, though.
Okay, a digital twin. Now that's getting closer. That's getting closer. There was a fad that's happened, and if you look, you may have seen a time where people were making themselves into action figures or toys
Yes.
or any other kinds of character. And there's been several waves of these that have happened on the internet, and probably a lot of our listeners and viewers have probably done that. And the thing is, if one of those images hits your inbox today, you probably get an eye roll because you've been there, done that, and you're on to the next. And this is the same thing that's happening with the Disneyland effect, or what I call the Alice effect, that wonder has a half-life. And the reason why I call it the Alice effect is in the classic books, the Alice in Wonderland books, there's a quote where Alice is saying, there's so much going on. There's such a cacophony of activity that I fail to be surprised anymore. And this is a reminder that in those classic books, using that protagonist to tell the story, that when we are just overwhelmed with all of this activity, it becomes boring. And so wonder has a half-life. And this is something that we as marketers especially need to be aware of. Just because the tool can have something new and novel, it in fact is working against us because the next new and novel thing is on its way. And if we only rely on the novelty to get attention, which is pretty much what marketing has been for the past, maybe 50 years, we are going to miss out on what really taps into the magic. And what that is going to be is something far more authentic, because all of these images, all of these messages that are coming across at such speed, they will very soon get a yawn and people will be onto the new and onto the next. And I think we have to find a way to cut through the noise. So my work on the attention economy early on, and in my book, and this Alice effect, it's very, very real. We have to figure out a way to have that relevant message that we talked about. And that is probably going to be something far more authentic than just another digital image or another kind of bell and whistle, even though the tool will support it.
Yeah, I think it's so great how you just paint this picture with that Disney example. I'm a Disney fan. I love it. I can be there many times. But I do understand that it's exactly that. It's hard for marketers today to even understand that not every trend is for them, and that trends are just trends, and they move away from that. And people move away from trends pretty easily, especially my generation that are now the main consumers. So Gen Z just moves really fast from trend to trend. And if a company or marketers don't understand that they need to find a way that people will remember their messages rather than the novelty that just wears off pretty quickly.
It's gonna fade away far, far faster
Mhm.
because of these same effects. That's the Alice effect. I bet, your generation, okay, yeah, my generation too. I think a lot of us have been inundated with a lot of AI music, and you've probably been reading in the media about. There's a lot of
Mhm.
backlash of real artists that are fighting back against this. But what we find is that even though there's a large volume of that, it doesn't land the same way that an authentic musician does. And it might be okay for a while or for certain purposes. I'm not saying it doesn't have its place. But there is something that is super special and attractive when you know that it's authentically being, mixed and produced for you or delivered for you by even the artist. So everything has its place. You could think about maybe even some movies that you go to. Who's going to say that special effects, which are definitely driven by AI, isn't something that attracts our attention? But we don't
Yeah.
want to watch all of that, trickery all of the time. In fact, we will be more attracted to the content when it is authentic and real. And so I think that there is a backlash going on, and that's happening faster and faster. The novelty is fading faster and faster. We're going to get bored by that faster and faster. And that puts a premium on people. And that's a good thing.
Yeah, yeah. It's definitely a good thing, just like you said, that there's gonna be a premium on people, but it's also the downside of how competitive it's gonna be to just be different than AI at some point. So, I'd like to jump in another section and talk about personalization now. Initially, personalization was a key differentiator for marketers. Everyone wanted to be different, putting their own little like spark onto things. So why do you think now it has become like the bare minimum and sometimes even a liability to put the personalized touch on things?
I think we're touching on it already. Yeah, back in the day, there was this store in a thing called a mall. People used to go there to shop. And I worked at a store called The Gap. And I was counseled by my manager, to keep track of my top customers. And I would be like writing down their likes and their dislikes. And if I got something in that I thought would appeal to them, I called them. And this was a way of expressing kind of personalization, that little kind of magic, because I made them feel seen. But nowadays it's become cheapened. I mean, initially it was okay to put the customer's name in an email. I remember back in the days when software could do that, it was magical. And you can have your whole mailing list and you're personalizing the email. But yes, it's table stakes nowadays. And in fact, it could even feel that it misses the mark because you don't really know me, and it can backfire that way just because we have just so much of it. McKinsey recently published a report on this, and they reminded us that AI-driven personalization that's gone mainstream, most brands are only seeing modest improvement from that because it's just noise. It's part of the background. It's the Alice effect. It's not genuine. It's not authentic. It's not really relevant anymore. My sister, she recently had a package arrive at her front door. And she was surprised to see that because it was, in fact, an anniversary gift. But she didn't recognize how it arrived. And she had to open the package, and it was even more special. It was the book. It was a cookbook that she was really fond of. And all of this was like, check, check, check. It was amazing to her, fully got her attention because it was something relevant to her, it was something that she was interested in. But it was also a little bit spooky because she didn't understand how it was that the company who sent it to her happened to be a vacation spot that she had frequented the year before. And in their database, she had written down when her anniversary was and some of her likes and dislikes. And so they meant for it to be personalized, and it was. But she also wrote to me that she felt a little icky about it at the same time. And that's because it missed this other part that we're talking about, this relevance, this authenticity that the company really cared about her. And this is the trap that marketers can fall into. The tools and the technology are going to make this easier than ever before. But if we forget about the authenticity and the relevance of who is sending the message, and do you really have a connection with that person, you might have it backfire. And those are some ways that it can sort of go wrong.
And I love that, and I completely agree with everything you're saying because exactly, it's just like, and even if we move into a global context of it, especially as like you're always surrounded by international students just like me at Hult. It even feels like helpful some things and can feel personalized for certain cultures and not icky or scary, but for other cultures or in another market, it may feel completely different and just get a completely different reaction from the audience or the customer. So, and I want to bring a recent example that sparked a lot of debate surrounding similar stuff that we've been talking about the whole episode. And it was Coca-Cola that remade its beloved holiday ad with AI 2 years running so far. So they have faced criticism both times and then claimed the work tested extremely well. What should marketers make of that?
It is a crazy example. If you had probably tested this in a focus group. If I'm certainly that there was a lot of smart people that made these ads, and if you're not familiar with these ads, they're still available on YouTube. I invite you to go and take a look at it. And in fact, it's not really the ad itself. The ad is very, very slick. There's a lot of great animation in it, but we hit up against this very interested dichotomy here, where, similar to my sister, the book was right, it was personalized, but it felt icky in some way. And I think Coca-Cola ran up against this. When you think about the those holidays, like Christmas is for a lot of people around the world, and that authentic wow that you get, and you try to celebrate it using a lot of fake animation, it just felt cheap. It felt a little bit that we were tricked into this, especially because a lot of artists argued they should have been the ones creating the ad. Now, I could argue that there's a lot of successful ads that are using animation, and it probably is also generated by AI, but it was the idea that they tapped into a holiday that's so near and dear to people's hearts that they probably should have used something a little bit more genuine, a little bit more authentic. Yeah. They're not the only ones. There's another famous example. McDonald's had an ad that showed all of the foibles, all of the challenges during the holiday season. So this is maybe our marketers should stay away from sacred holidays to people. And they tried to show all of the challenges, and that is challenging during the holidays. Things are really busy and bustling, and not everything goes right. And then they tried to show that McDonald's, of all places, was a place to have some peace and quiet and solace. I'm not so sure about that, but there's nothing the matter with the ad. Actually, if you look at the ad, it's entertaining. It has a lot of truth to it. Not everything goes our way. Things are bustling, but it's missing that something authentic that people are really looking for brands to make sure they honor. And I think this is a bigger challenge now, when the tools make it easier than ever to spin up more and more of that content. So we used to say content is king, but it's not the volume of the content. It's the relevance of that, the appropriateness of that, and the authenticity of that. We've got to find some new ways to build community to do that.
Community. I love that word. I think we've lost a little bit of it in all this AI that we have around us and the fast it moves. So talking about AI tools and the buzzwords about it and how much it's in every conversation. For marketers, leaders, and students entering the field, how do you tell real value of these tools from the hype before it eats out the budget?
Yeah, it's really a good distinction. I talk a lot about vanity AI versus viable AI. And I think this is a good way to looking at it. If a tool or something is just speeding up a process and it's not really adding a lot of value, you definitely are looking at something like vanity AI, excuse me. And vanity AI is going to be a quick fix to something. It might create more content for you, but viable AI is going to tap into this authenticity. It has to be something that adds a little bit more value for the brand or for you. So if it dazzles, it's not that the dazzling part isn't great. I gave you Disney example. I gave you the ways that tools can sort of create characters for you, but the hype has to be met up with a habit, with something that people are going to do. And really, you get to viable AI only through the help. I think that's a good way of looking at it. You've got the hype, you've got a habit, but you need to get to help. So you may have one of those things, but if you don't have all three, you're not really going to be adding value through the tool. So we see this a lot with companies that are adopting these things. Maybe you're seeing in the news that AI is going to maybe speed up some kind of a process. That's a vanity AI. It's just replacing what people are doing today. As a marketer, I can spin up hundreds and hundreds of social media posts. But if I don't get these other parts of it right, that I'm tapping into a habit, that something that people are going to be doing that's near and dear to them, and helping them do that, that's the authenticity, they probably have missed out on something. So I would encourage everybody to look at that you're really tapping into this. And that explains a lot why you're seeing in the headlines sometimes that AI doesn't work, doesn't help. It's because they're missing that part. So viable AI should do all three of those things and really hit your audience, hit your target market, hit your customer, hit your loved ones, where it really counts.
Great. And connected to that, How do you think, or how would you say that Holt is helping students build the confidence to use AI critically and practically? So in a viable way instead of in a vanity way.
Yeah. This is really exciting. Just announced very recently, I've been tracking Halt. We are going to be leaning into more of a lab experience. And when you think about a lab, you're building something, you're doing something, you're experimenting with something, and you come out with some benefit or some insight or some knowledge. And I think that we were always doing that with our programs, but now we are focusing on AI labs. And AI labs are giving students a dedicated block of time. It's going to be like 3 weeks that they take no other courses other than the AI labs. And that means that they're going to be practicing with these tools, not just learning about them in theory, but they're going to be building things that they can't do anywhere else for real companies or real business problems. So I think this is a way that we don't just want to talk about AI in theory, but we're going to be leaning into it in practice. And this is going to be a new experience that we're launching across the postgraduate programs, our graduate programs like our MBAs and Masters of International Management and Marketing as well in the fall. And this is going to give everybody hands-on practice with these tools. I hope to do some of these things that we're talking about building viable AI.
Yeah, I'm so glad to hear that my dear Holt is just integrating AI in part of the curriculum and not just like a side topic, like a lot of other places we can see. And it's integrating AI literacy and experimentation and critical thinking into the student experience. I've lived it so far. I'm so excited to see that it's getting even more implemented into the program as part of AI Lab. But I've seen it since my freshman year, and now even more as I approach my wrapping up in the health experience. So before we wrap up this incredible episode, I want to ask you about one final question that we always ask on Expert Talk. What's your one piece of advice for students and professionals who are turning in today?
Well, I've been trying to boil this down to a lot of audiences, and I just can't overstate it enough. And is be curious. There's a famous quote that Einstein has that I'm paraphrasing. He has no special talent. He's just passionately curious. And at a time where things are just moving so fast and it can feel just so overwhelming, which is this double-edged sword we've been talking about, marketers can be tempted especially to use these tools to create volume. What we need to do is lean into creating value. And we can do that by being passionately curious about something that we want to do each day. In my book, I've been talking about different methods to do that. And it's a simple thing. Make a goal to learn one new tool this week and build on that so that in the next quarter of your life, the next 3 months, you're going to have all kinds of new experiences to see how these things can make an impact. And I think by doing that, by having an exposure to be passionately curious on ways that these tools can enhance whatever it is that you want to do, don't ask what the tool is doing, ask what you want to do. You're going to be better off by really leaning in and finding that value, no matter how it is that you want to apply it. So I think I invite everybody this week, right now, make a goal on something that you are curious about, that you want to figure out how AI could play, and go out there and find that opportunity to be exposed to something, take a Coursera class, look at something at Hult that might interest you, and lean into that. That's going to be the best hour of your life that you have invested, and it's going to pay you dividends on the end, again, for the value that you're creating.
Thank you very much for that advice. And if I can jump into that, I think at my 3 years at Holt so far, I can say that Holt's a place that gives the chance to students to spark curiosity and adaptability always. And I think that's one of my favorite things about being a Holt student. So thank you so much, Professor Patrick, for joining us today and making such a valuable and insightful conversation with me. It was a great time. And of course, thank you to our audiences for joining us today on our Expert Talk episode here. And as I mentioned earlier, today's session will also be available to rewatch on demand through our YouTube channel. So feel free to revisit it or to share it with someone who might find it useful as well. If you want to find out more about Holt or how Holt prepares its students to lead in an AI-driven world with the skills and global network to last a lifetime, you can also visit our website, hult.edu, to learn so much more about our program. Wishing you all success as you navigate the exciting opportunities of an AI shaped world, just like I'm diving hard into it too. And thank you so much for listening, everyone. And thank you, Professor Lynch, again. Bye.